Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. Today we're going to be playing with kind of a cool deck. I'm really excited for this one. So Dylan G sent me an email saying, hey, I really like Thermo-Alchemist, which is one of those pinger cards that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to untap it. Do you think we could combine that with the Magecraft shell and create a deck that just makes a whole bunch of triggers and gets your opponent dead? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at this deck. First, I do want to give a shout out to Sean D, though. We ended up with a whole bunch of Doomsday coincidentally at the top of the queue, and Sean said, hey, if you play some Magecraft, I'll happily, wait another week or two to see my deck. So Sean, thank you for that flexibility. And let's take a look at what we're going to be playing with today. So essentially, what I did was I took my starting point of the Abzan Magecraft deck that I played before. And when we had access to white, we had access to Clever Lumimancer, which meant that we had a turn one aggressive one drop that we could play. And in that shell, I was opting for Invigorate and Berserk type cards to try to end the game via damage, in addition to just the Chain of Smog combo. So in case you're not familiar with this combo, Chain of Smog lets you target yourself. So you can target yourself, copy the spell, and then with something that has a Magecraft trigger, like say Sedgemoor Witch, every time you cast or copy a spell, you get to repeat the effect. Using Chain of Smog, we can make infinite creatures, we can make an infinitely large creature, or we can infinitely drain our opponents out. So that's side one of the deck. Side two of the deck is that we're just playing a decent number of cantripping effects that will allow us to untap and reuse our Thermo-Alchemist. Alternatively, we can just kind of like dig for the combo pieces that we're needing. So while previously I was running Clever Lumimancer and then like Invigorates, Berserks, and Mutagenic Growths, now I'm running more cantripping effects. So I've thrown Faithless Looting in there. And yes, this is card disadvantage, but when we have a card that will basically end the game every single time that we draw it, that card disadvantage is okay. And if we have some number of our threats in play, we're actually going to get a good amount of value out of each time we cast something like a Faithless Looting. I am also going to try a 2 of Faithless Salvaging. So this is 1 in a red, discard a card, and then draw a card. And this specifically has Rebound, which when we have all of these pinger effects, actually can be really useful. So for example, like say we have one of these Dragon Guard elites in play, we cast Faithless Salvaging, we put a +1/+1 counter on it. We cast Faithless Salvaging again the following turn, we get another +1/+1 counter on this. So if we assume something like that is close-ish to the floor, then Faithless Salvaging over the course of 2 turns is, another Faithless Looting that triggers the Dragon's Guard Elite twice. A note here, the order is discard, then draw. So if you are empty-handed when you cast this, this is just a +1 card. A couple notes on things where my head was at in sort of building this deck. I think a lot of times the Thermo-Alchemist things function best as either mono-red decks or blue-red decks. The reason being, you either just have a crap ton of burn that you can hurl directly at your opponent's face. If your turn starts with tap, ping you for 1, and then you just play like Lightning Bolt, Lightning Bolt, Lightning Bolt, or equivalent, you get another Lightning Bolt worth of damage out of the Thermo-Alchemist. Or alternatively, you go ping you, ponder, ping you, preordain, ping you, brainstorm. And that's how we get the most value out of Thermo-Alchemist. Now, I'll get an okay amount of value out of Thermo-Alchemist between like looting, harvest, Manamorphose, and some of the other incidental stuff that I have. But this is not going as hard into the Thermo-Alchemist like ping you shell as is possible. So this is one of my build around cards. If you end up wanting to try out something similar to this at home, consider that there are other things that are similar to this that aren't this. So for example, you could also play something like a Young Pyromancer in this slot if you want to try to go wide of your opponents. As far as the mana base goes, I opted to just essentially color shift the mana base that I had before. I goldfished 4 or 5 games, and I always killed on turn 3 because I had Chain of Smog or just another ridiculous way to do things. So mana base seems okay at a glance. I didn't run the numbers on it though. As far as the sideboard, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. Like, this is obviously a first draft of something, so I'll just kind of explain where my head was at. I wanted to make sure I had some cards to bring in for combo. And since I'm running 4 Thoughtseizes in the main deck, I figured if I supplement that with a few discard spells and then surgical extractions, that would give me a decent chance to get out of the early game against most combo decks. And I can probably produce either a good amount of combo or a combo kill of my own, before turn 4 or 5, the vast majority of games, if I'm not being heavily disrupted. So that was the starting point. Next up, I wanted a few cards that could be flexible against various decks that had artifacts. In leagues, there's a good amount of artifact-based, like Karn-style decks running around. There's Death and Taxes, which has Ether Vial and Equipment to worry about. There's decks like the Epic Storm as well. So I figured a few Null Rods would do the trick. Finally, I wanted a handful of removal of various kinds. So against my Delver decks, Chain Lightning and Endurance are going to serve as my removal spells for their threats. Force of Vigor will be my removal spells for other artifacts and enchantments that Null Rod just doesn't explicitly stop. And then I'm playing 2 Cavernous Souls, because I realized pretty late in deck building that literally all of my threats are humans. Now, why am I not playing these in the main deck? Well, I have very tough mana requirements. Like, I have a green-black card, I have potentially wanting turn 1 all of my various colors, and things are just a little bit mana intensive. But if I'm playing against a control-heavy deck, especially one that doesn't have wastelands, this could be something really powerful that helps me to ram my combo through. This is a first draft again, so don't expect everything to be perfect here. So for example, in building this, I realized, I don't really have a great answer to a Murktide Regent, and I just went, okay, I'm just going to accept that and take this as a starting point, and we'll kind of see how things play out. Okay, that was a really long deck tech, but I hope that was kind of useful in seeing how I designed this deck. If you're new here, consider throwing me a subscription before we get started for sweet Legacy, Modern, and Vintage content. And if you're a regular, throw me a like before we begin. It's the easiest way to support my content for free. Let's battle. Okay, so I do not have a 2-drop threat. I have a 3-drop threat and a couple of things that I can do early on to help smooth out this hand. I think I'm going to keep this. Chain of Smog is the least replaceable card in this deck, so I don't mind just having starting hands with it. Alright, so it looks like my opponent mulliganed once and then kept their hand. If this is Reanimator, I am in trouble for game 1 here. Okay. Still feeling the Reanimator energy. And honestly, them taking my Sedgemoor Witch and just reanimating it is kind of rough. It's no Grizzlebrand, but this card is good. Like, they're a Faithless Looting sort of deck too, so they can go through stuff pretty quickly. Alright, so I go down the chain. I think I will go ahead and filter through some of my cards here. I have a handful of things that I would like to find. This needs to be a red-producing land. From there, it doesn't matter too much. I have a lot of black and a lot of green. So let's loot. Probably throw away the Faithless Salvaging, unless I just get a whole bunch of land here. Yeah. So I'm 100% throwing away Forest. And then I think Salvaging is the other one. The Salvaging is sort of interesting because it can find me Chain of Smog, and I'm really looking to close out the game as quickly as possible. But I already have a looting in the graveyard that I can play the turn after I play the Sedgemoor Witch. Ooh, okay. So we might be looking at something more in the Doomsday ballpark here. All right. Let's take a peek, see if my opponent brainstorms in response to hide some stuff. Okay, so we are looking at more of a Tin Fins style deck right now. Limb Duel's Vault for just infinite selection here is kind of scary. There's no creature in their graveyard yet. I think I'm just going to take the Limb Duel's Vault and kind of like waste their turn. If I take the Shallow Grave, they just Limb Duel's Vault and like they get to use their mana. So I think I'm going to punch a hole like that. And then use this to find a non-land. A Witherbloom Apprentice. That's a fine card. So the downside of taking the line that I did is that if they ponder into Entomb specifically, things get a little bad for me. That was bottom with that, so that's just a blind redraw. I'm a little surprised about their sequencing. I know they have that fetch land. I think more optimal sequencing is ponder, take the best of those, fetch, and then you can preordain and manipulate the top cards of your library. And if you like both, you get to keep both. And you still can use your blue mana because you've already fetched. So the interesting thing on my next turn is, do I play Witch or do I play Witherbloom? Do I play Witherbloom Apprentice? So the Witherbloom Apprentice means that if I draw Chain of Smog, I have an instant kill the following turn. But the Sedgemoor Witch probably provides more power over time, just because of like the way its ability works. I think I'm just playing the Witch, but we'll see what I draw. JK, I'll be playing the Witherbloom Apprentice since I can also Thoughtseize this turn. All right. Oh, and opponent is just F6 now. Get a Thoughtseize them. Yield to that. We got our first ping of the match. Okay. A little annoying. I think I take the Shallow Grave here. If I just like take something like the Grief, my opponent can just Shallow Grave it back. I'll take the Shallow Grave. Now, my opponent could just draw a land and play a Grief, and then I don't get attacks in with Witherbloom Apprentice, but, like, that's fine, because I'll still get this passive pinging damage. Okay, it looks like my opponent is just passing their turn here. Do I want to play the Sedgemoor Witch this turn? Or do I want to just, like, look for Chain of Smog and get my opponent dead? I don't know how much time I have. I think I'll just play the Witch this turn. And then I get more value out of my triggers a little bit later. We'll get in there. Opponent's at 13. We've got 5 guaranteed damage next turn. 6, 7 off of these. Plus, if my opponent gets the Grief in play, having a Menace threat in play is pretty good. And that is indeed what we're seeing here. So I probably lose out on the Abundant Harvest. I think that's the better cantrip. Yep, opponent agrees. Oh, Chain of Smog. Fantastic. I guess I'm just going to Manamorphose first and just see if they are F6ing. They are not. Make black red with this. I mean, there's like basically no downside to me trying this. All right. Chain of Smog me. I would like to Chain of Smog me again. Nice. Okay, so that would have been Infinite Drain and Infinite Creatures there on turn 5. Not bad. Okay, so I would like Endurance, Surgical Extraction, and Inquisition is medium. I'm still probably going to play it. What don't I want? The Faithless Salvaging is kind of the slowest thing here in terms of my cantrips, so that can probably go pretty easily. I am technically bringing in 2 creatures, so I could probably go down a couple of creatures as well. The Thermo-Alchemist is probably going to be my weakest creature in this match because it itself does not actually attack, and I really care about pressuring my opponent's life total, since they're a combo deck that can do things that are bigger and scarier than what I can do. I also am bringing in a just metric crap ton of cards, 2 of which are creatures. Does make some of those things worse, although I'm subbing out at least 2 creatures already. I need 3 more cuts. I think it's between some number of Thermo-Alchemists and some number of Lightning Bolts. The Lightning Bolts probably aren't removing very many creatures. There is Grief to think about. Maybe I do something like this. Just leave me with enough threats. This is 14 threats. Closer to 12, because the Endurance is going to be a pitch spell a huge portion of the time. Maybe I need to keep like 2 of those Alchemists. What I cut instead? Maybe let's do a little mix match there and just kind of split the difference. Okay, this is a fine hand. I have 2 pieces of early interaction and 2 Magecraft threats. This isn't like I will turbo goldfish you as quickly as possible or anything, but I have a decent number of options here, and a lot of my top decks will be good. Okay, that was a shuffle. There's now a pause here, so I think my opponent has either Grief or Unmask, and they're thinking about using it. This is probably going to be Badlands, since I have Forest in hand already. And let's see what's up. Yeah, okay, so they had an Unmask they were thinking about. What land do they have? Underground Sea? Underground Sea. The Entomb is probably the most valuable and least replaceable thing here. I think I'm going to take that. And honestly, there's a world where I should just surgical extract that. It becomes much harder for my opponent to actually get something into the graveyard. I don't think I'm going to do that now. If my opponent does not take my surgical with a Thoughtseize, I probably will do that on my own turn, though, because then this elite will get a +1/+1 counter out of the deal. And I'm a little light on ways to just trigger that now. That is a Grief. What did that pitch? Exiling a Grizzlebrand. Interesting. Huh. Yeah, I guess I'm good with that. Okay, the surgical goes. That's fine. I'm now expecting to see a Thoughtseize follow-up. Yep. And I'm guessing I lose one of these 2 threats. Yep. Okay, don't really want to see that. I think I will just take the marginal deck thinning over time here. I don't think the 1 point of life will be super relevant, because I'm most likely to get hit in chunks of 7. I'll play out my Duder. So in theory, this can get bigger than a lot of the threats that my opponent can actually put into play. Like, this will outclass Grief, for example. And given time, you know, especially with this Lightning Bolt in hand, I could potentially just rumble through other stuff as well. All right. I've shown my opponent this Forest already, so I'm just going to play the Forest here. Go for this pre-combat Thoughtseize. Okay, that's a little scary. All right, that is a Grizzlebrand. I mean, I guess, like, now is the question is, like, is their top card of library a reanimation spell? It's very possible. But they just shuffled, so I think I'm just going to send this to the Dome and try to make Grizzlebrand draw 7 as risky as possible. All right. Was it a reanimation spell? It was not. Then this is going to be very good for me. I choose non-land here. Oh, Manamorphose. Great. So one of these colors needs to be black for sure. Maybe pick black, green. Okay. Not exactly what we were looking for here, but not bad, because it can let me do some non-combat damage next turn if I need to. If my opponent does, like, successfully get the Grizzlebrand into play. Oh, this is so much damage, though. So, like, now actual factual reanimate is no longer on the table. And with a couple cantripping things, Thermo-Alchemist can finish off my opponent. Yeah, Entomb is not what they're looking for here. They just, like, have to thin the deck out, though. Alright, they have taken a Cabal Therapy. Okay, and we take down match 1. Good stuff. Okay, for round 2, I'm starting with a bit of a tricky opening hand here. I have double Thermo-Alchemist and a way to cantrip after playing them, but I don't actually have black mana. I am on the play, and I could use the Abundant Harvest on turn 1 to get my 3rd land for this, or fuel for these. I am not sure about this hand. I think this is about as powerful as the average 6-card hand. I also think this is potentially keepable. But with this Thoughtseize currently being a dead card, and with the Abundant Harvest somewhat being forced to get a land, I think I'm just going to ship this and look for something a little more stable. I'm good with this. I get a few redraws here with the Abundant Harvest to find a threat, and then again, Chain of Smog is the least replaceable card in the deck, so every time I start with that card in my hand, I am happy. The next question is like, what do I get rid of here? I think it's just the Metamorphose. Because while that's great once you have threats, before you have the threat, it is just straight up a redraw. And I'm just going to lead on Taiga and non-land Abundant Harvest, trying to hit a turn 2 creature. Oh my god, how does he do it? How does he do it? So this is a theoretical turn 3 Goldfish as of right now. We are hoping to not be playing against a highly interactive deck, such as Blue-Red Delver. Alright. I think I'm going to slow down here and see if I can take like a Swords to Plowshares out of my opponent's hand here. Just because I think there's one too many things that could muck with me right now. I need this to get black. What's my secondary color here? Probably green. And let's Thoughtseize. So the good news is my opponent might not know what they need to hide based on these Jund lands. Did I reveal anything extra with it? Oh no, I revealed this. Okay, they do know what they need to hide. Oh, okay. Well, we're not taking the life from the loam, so I guess that means we're taking a Terminus. I think I just Abundant Harvest non-land again. Lightning Bolt's kind of whatever here. Okay. Alright. So we're going to play out this threat. If it dies, it dies. We'll Faithless Looting and try to find another one. If it doesn't die, I can decide whether or not I want to go for the infinite combo immediately. I think the answer is I don't. Alright. So they had a second Brainstorm to set up the Terminus, which is admittedly quite annoying. Yeah. And they did not cast it. Misclick or genius level plan? Unsure. Looting? I think pre-combat looting is fine. Not really expecting this card to make it through the turn. Though I didn't expect it to make it through the last turn either, so like, who knows? I'm going to discard one Thermo-Alchemist, and then I probably want to keep the second as another threat, because like, I know my opponent has a Terminus. I think I'll just discard the looting. And then keep some instant speed Trixies around. Swing in. I hate how small the text on this is. Is 3 fine? Do I want to go for more? No, if I go for more, I open myself up to a Lightning Bolt. I think I'll just take this. Okay. That kind of makes me just think that last turn was a mistake. Okay, I mean, that's super cool. If my opponent doesn't go for a Fate Seal, I get to just Lightning Bolt. Bolt now? Bolt now and play around Force of Negation? Yeah, sure. I think that's better than the +1/+1 counter. So I want this to be red. I have green. I don't have black yet. I'll pick this up and bolt this. Okay. Do I just want to try to instantly make an infinite-sized creature? Kind of. Go ahead and fetch out. At this point, it doesn't really matter too much what I pick up. Like a Bayou is fine. All right. There's the Elite. And, I mean, fuck it. Let's go for it. Okay, seems like it is potentially working. I'll know for sure after this next one. Yeah, okay, so it looks like I am going to get an infinite-sized creature. Okay. So I made this thing into a 31/31. I wanted to go a little bit over 20, just to make sure that if my opponent did something like played a Neuro and then Swords to Plowshare it, that I'm not just walking into them, staying alive for a turn. Note that there's a big difference between Paper Magic and Magic Online for these sorts of reasons here. On Magic Online, this would have been like a 1,000/1,000, and then if my opponent went and, Swords to Plowshare this, they just, like, physically could not win on damage. Alright, good stuff. We take down game 1. Against, what looks to be essentially a Bant deck that probably has another color specifically to make Prismatic Ending better. I know Bosch and Roll, Brian has been working on a essentially Bant deck with Life from the Loam. I didn't watch his video to see kind of specifically what he was doing with that. Okay, so how do I want to do this? I guess my starting point is, what do I not want? Generally speaking, I think Faithless Salvaging is going to be the weakest card in my deck. There were two of those as a way to fill out the deck, and I think they add something to it. But I think in post-sideboard games, that's very frequently going to be the first card that I go to cut. And so kind of my question here is, like, how do I want to wiggle through stuff here? I think some amount of this stuff is going to go to the way of the dodo. Like, I think I'm probably going to do this as a starting point, because this gives me 2 more threats and a way to just go and do some damage to my opponent's graveyard if they're doing cool things with Life from the Loam. From there, could go a couple of different routes. I didn't really see counterspells from my opponent that game. I presume they're in there somewhere. I think until I see the counterspells, I don't want to just play Cavern of Souls, because like my Chain of Smogs and stuff could just get countered anyway, and that's kind of whatever. I also expect that my opponent is going to try to really just get in there with removal density. So this might be all the swapping that I do for game 2, and then game 3, when I have a little bit more information, I might do some other stuff. So for example, on the play in game 3 with more information, the Inquisition of Kozilek might look better. This hand is fine. I will keep it. I don't like the fact that it has Mountain with Witherbloom Apprentice here. Like, that's a non-bow, and it means that I really have to use my Abundant Harvest on turn 1 for a land, unless I draw a land, and that means those aren't going to be triggering Witherbloom Apprentice a little bit later. Oh, I drew a land. Sick. Okay. Now, do I want to cast Abundant Harvest on 1 for a non-land? I think so. Kind of keep things churning. Oh, that's quite good. Again, though, because I have this Mountain, I can't Apprentice and Thoughtseize on turn 3 unless I rip another land. That's fine. Obviously good, but I have a lot of Drain. That's interesting. The Thoughtseize becomes, like, less good because of the presence of Sylvan Library. I think I'm going to play this on turn 3. The question is, like, Thermo-Alchemist versus Witherbloom Apprentice. I think I want to play Witherbloom Apprentice. I have an incredibly creature-heavy draw versus kind of the average of what this deck probably draws. And so, like, now, next turn, I can Thoughtseize attack, or, yeah, probably Thoughtseize attack and then play Thermo-Alchemist. I'm going to have to live in fear of just, like, Terminus floating on the top of my library all game. Like, that's a thing. Is Matic ending me already? Nope. Okay. Alright, are we going to... Okay, we are going to see the immediate shuffle, so there's not just a Terminus lurking imminently on the top of library. Ending. Ending. Okay. So I think this is Thoughtseize first, then Thermo-Alchemist. Although, honestly, I could just play another Witherbloom Apprentice and then, like, repeat my turn cycle next turn. It's actually much more damage over time. Or I could just straight up play a Sedgemoor Witch out. Yeah, let's do that. Because if that resolves, that guarantees 3 life loss, other than Terminus happening. Mountain has constrained me a good bit. Yep. I mean, that's fine. Like, we got 3 life out of it. That's what we're looking for. And, like, if we can make it to the late game here, like, there's a lot of ping here. I would really just like a black producing land. Yeah. Okay. Hardcast Endurance on my turn in a lot of scenarios. I think I'll wait. It super sucks if this gets countered, but if it doesn't get countered, this is my strongest line. And I have not seen any counter spells from my opponent yet. That doesn't mean they're not in there, but I have not seen any yet. Alright. We've shipped their graveyard away. And I still have a lot of pinging pressure. Alright, no life loss from Sylvan Library. Okay, Expressive Iteration is in there too, sure. Alright, so they make their land drop off the Expressive Iteration. I might get to play, like, super conservatively here, and just, like, only commit 1 creature to the board at a time. Not get caught by Terminus. Okay, Bayou is a fantastic draw. Let's crash in, see if I get my 3. Okay, so now is the question, like, do I want to commit another creature to board? Do I want to Thoughtseize? Because, like, the sequencing matters a ton here. I think I'm going to Thoughtseize. Just just everything in my gut is telling me, like, be thinking about Terminus right now. Okay, and, gut has changed. Okay, maybe not. Still thinking about Terminus again now. Okay. So this Brainstorm is probably the most dangerous card here. It also turns on Force of Negation. And there's also EE to think about. EE on 2 would be rather devastating. I mean, Brainstorm's also just so good here. My opponent EE's on 2. Like, that will just trade with one of the 3 2-drops in my hand. I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm going to take the Brainstorm and just, like, play with as much known information as possible. And I am not going to commit another card to the board here. I also don't think I want to Thoughtseize away the EE. I think that 1 life might be valuable. This has been an incredibly difficult to play game, just by the way. Alright. That is exceptionally bad for me. Yeah. Okay. So I was hoping for something more along the lines of, like, opponent taps out and uses 5 total mana to get rid of this Endurance. Well, let's crash in with Endurance and go from there. 3. Opponent is down to 5. If I get this Force of Negation out of their hand, there's a very good chance that I win on the following turn. I can play Witherbloom Apprentice and Chain of Smog in the same turn cycle. I'm just constantly in this situation of, like, is there a Terminus on top of my opponent's library? Ugh. It's such a stressful position to be in. I think I'm going to cast this prior to doing anything else and see how my opponent values their engineered explosives. Okay. They did not cast this Swords to Plowshares, which makes me think a Terminus is on top of library. I think I take the Swords to Plowshares and then make them draw a blue card for Force of Negation next turn. Otherwise, I win. Yeah. I think I'm good with that. And I think I continue to play around Terminus being on top of my opponent's library. Okay, it's not there. I mean, I guess it could be the second card down. Yep. All right. Am I willing to go for it? My opponent has one of their 2 just random cards be a blue card. It's not great for me to go for it. Maybe I play Sedge. No. Get more and more time to draw blue cards. Kind of the issue. Playing out Sedgemoor Witch is kind of weird because, like, then my opponent could play EE, wipe all of our creatures. Playing out a Witherbloom Apprentice that can be answered by EE is weird because then my Witherbloom Apprentices can get surgical and I end up in a weird spot. Oh my god. I think I'm going to go for the Witch this turn. Not sure if waiting here is correct. I mean, but this entire game has been, you know, this game of cat and mouse, like, should I be going for this or not? Okay. So that was pretty likely their draw for turn. So now they're just getting more and more chances to draw blue cards for Force of Negation, so I probably try not to go for it immediately. You'll run back? Probably. Let's see if I can get in there. My opponent to 5. Play Sedgemoor Witch. If this makes it around the table, I'm pretty comfortable with, like, going for Witherbloom plus Chain of Smog, because I get a decent amount of incidental value out of it. Okay, the Force of Negation is gone. Generally speaking, the coast is clear-ish. Now, my opponent does have a handful of unknown cards, but, like, now I no longer have to play around the card that I was most fearful of from their hand. At some point, they could just, like, play an EE on 2 and just kind of float it out there to avoid immediately dying to the combo. Okay. So this is kind of a good sign for me, because it probably means that they don't have a Force of Will or Force of Negation in hand, that they're looking for something to pitch to. I like that for me. All right. And now, like, I am at 6. This is probably where I go for it. Okay. Okay, yeah. So again, same play pattern where they probably don't have a Force of Will effect because they're not just keeping these Uros to have blue cards to pitch. Yeah, it is time to go for it. Green, black. Chain of Smog. Are you dead? It. Not dead. Alright, so unfortunately I do have to discard 2 of my cards here. I will discard these 2. Do I copy this? No. This is now a chump blocker. And my out here is chump block with endurance. Ah, shit. So my out there was chump block with endurance, then play Witherbloom, Apprentice, and draw Chain of Smog. That was my out. In full disclosure, I should have conceded there and not let my opponent scene my deck. Because I'm not really playing on good outs anymore. And honestly, since I'm so far down on time, I should probably concede here. Okay, yeah, this is bad. Yeah, maybe I played too scared of Terminus this game. I have not even seen a Terminus this game. Which is maybe not saying something because, like, Sylvan Library is a thing that exists. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw the towel here and, like, save myself some time if I need to, like, combo off multiple times. For this game on the play, I think I want more Inquisitions to kind of pave the way for an early combo kill. And just, like, checking to see what my opponent has in hand seems pretty valuable. The Lightning Bolts seem a little less valuable to me. And my opponent has so much removal that, like, playing out Thermo-Alchemist was not... I don't know, like, maybe I need the creature density. Yeah, I'll keep the creature density. And let's junk these. Do I want Caverns? That is another thing that I could do. Let's go a little land heavier and keep my stuff uncounterable. I also just, like, don't mind having the extra land, because I was a little pressed last game. Maybe I'll just board 1? Maybe it is both. Just be land heavier and then be able to use Abundant Harvest more aggressively for non-lands. I think I'm okay with that. This has a pinger, a turn 1 disruption thing, and a bunch of cantrips. This is fine. I do think the Thermo-Alchemist is feeling like the worst threat in the deck, but I don't think that's the end of the world. I just need to take my opponent's fastest removal spell here. I think I need to take the Prismatic Ending. The EE will be 4 mana to get rid of my pinger, and then hopefully by then I've dealt 5-ish damage with it. I'm fetching and getting a red source. I think the Witherbloom Apprentice is more damage for a card that I know my opponent already has answers to. I go ahead and drop that here. Because Witherbloom Apprentice and Thermo-Alchemist will do the same amount of damage from their stuff, but Witherbloom Apprentice also gets to crack in for 2. Oh, fuck me. Alright. So the argument for playing the Thermo-Alchemist first is so that if I draw Chain of Smog later, it's an out to kill my opponent. But I don't mind Chain of Smog just sitting in my hand until I have an opportunity to just kill my opponent. Like, I don't need to just, like, play this as aggro as possible. Oh. Okay, an Inquisition. That can take the Expressive Iteration, which is pretty good. We'll tap that. I think I will go ahead and just lead on a Manamorphose here. Thing again. I think I don't want Faithless Looting this turn. I'll just pick black-green. Witch, not bad. I'll Inquisition you now. Get my next ping in. Ooh, Brainstorm and Force of Will, in addition to Expressive Iteration. I'll be taking the Expressive Iteration here. Alright, now I will cast an Abundant Harvest, and I'm not sure which mode is better here. Ping my opponent. Land gets me Sedgemoor, which I probably want to play next turn. I'm going to go ahead and take land. Oh, actually, that gives me 1 more damage this turn. I don't want to discard either one of these cards. But the Faithless Looting is worth 1 damage right now. Is that fine? I think that's fine. Hang my opponent again. I always discard Faithless Looting. I know my opponent has the Force of Will. So maybe I just do uncounterable Sedgemoor Witch next turn. I think I'm good with that. Give up the potential infinite combo. I hope that I've proved that the Thermo-Alchemist is worth answering immediately. Okay, so there's going to be an end of turn brainstorm. If this sets up a terminus and they get to just like chill with that there, that's not the best for me. So I have 2 lootings in the graveyard for draining purposes later. Okay. Alright. Unfortunately, they're not just going to crack the E immediately. Alright, ping you. Aim human. Cast Sedgemoor Witch. Plot sees you. Always yield to this. Again, just constantly living in fear of Terminus. My opponent could crack EE here, so I don't get the ping damage. That's good for me, because that means that I'm not just facing down. I'll obviously take the Force of Will here. I'm not just facing down. Sorry, I forgot where that thought was going. I'm not facing down Terminus. There we go. That was it. All right. So I am hoping to rattle off a whole bunch of damage with Sedgemoor Witch over the next turn cycle. We'll start with a Faithless Looting. Get another Pest. Endurance is the best of these cards, although I can't use it in this turn cycle. Bash on in there. This Endurance is going to be 1 turn cycle too late. My opponent plays Uro the vast majority of the time this turn. Yeah. Unfortunate. So the other unfortunate thing is that like my opponent is just going to hold up a Force of Negation. Just kind of like naturally due to how their lands fell. Oh no, they're not. That's a little greedy, because like I now have a window to create infinite creatures unless you end up with a blue card in hand that you pitch. Okay, never mind. They ripped Surgical, so they can take my Chain of Smog and eliminate that as an out. So Sedgemoor Witch can still attack into Uro because of Menace. Holy shit, that's good. So this still gets to crash in. Okay, I was about to say, like, did I forget what Menace was? Alright, good. I did not forget what Menace was. I am still going to be living in utter fucking fear of Terminus, though. Holy shit. Now it is just like an X4-1. But I have 6 unblockable damage. God fucking damn it. Alright. Flash Threat on my opponent's end of turn. I think Flash Threat on my opponent's end of turn. Alright, let's see how this works. Okay. Play the uncounterable one now. I'm just going to hold that for a Faithless Looting later. My Witherbloom Apprentice has resolved, which is fine. But, like, I'm going to be very afraid of my opponent just, like, drawing things like Expressive Iteration and getting card advantage. My attacks are also going to be a little sus. Because my opponent could play something like an Endurance with Flash and just get me in combat, and it's super bad for me. Yep, that is also super bad for me. How many Lightning Bolts are in my deck right now? None. That is bad news for me. That is also bad news for me. Alright, so I'm going to cast a Faithless Looting. Get my Drain on. And try to figure out what to do with the rest of this hand. Discard 2 lands, I think. I will go ahead and cast this, picking non-land. Okay. You had the opportunity to do that a bit earlier. Okay. So I'll play this next turn. It is a very bad card versus Jace. I think this one's probably over. Wonder if I just played game 2 too conservatively and I should have just, like, jammed. Didn't feel good to jam. Like, it felt like I had patience, but, like, it felt like I had the time to be patient. But here I am pretty far behind at the tail end of this game. I mean, this resolves, but I am a little low on gas. Alright, it's another Terminus. Kinda suspected that. So, when my opponent brainstormed rather than bouncing, and then didn't Swords to Plowshares immediately, I had kind of connected the dots that that was very possible. But I just, like, have to jam at every opportunity right now. I will also concede to my opponent getting an Uro into play, by the way, because that's just something that I realistically can't beat right now without the infinite combo finish in my deck. Play this one. I don't have the time to check and see whether or not I have lands remaining in my deck that are fetchable. Well, lands that I care about. Because I know that I still have the basics, but I don't really want those right now. Also, holy hell, this game, this match, this round, whatever you want to call it, ended up being really long. Don't have time to think about this. I could, like, try to wait and, like, play this at the same time that I could drain, like, for 1 point of damage. But I don't know that that's actually good. Versus just, like, F6ing as much of this time as I can. I'm very far behind on board and in terms of time, and if I'm racing both of those, don't think I get to play this game conservatively. Like, my opponent has a lot going on. Aggressive iteration is bad. Doing an EE, which I'm not sure what they'll put it on. I guess 3 for a Sedgemoor Witch is probably the scariest thing, because the 2-drops they can kind of bounce most of the time, and it's fine. I might be ready to throw in the Towel. My opponent's not at a lot of life, but they have an answer to Sedgemoor Witch and most of the other things that I can do here. I guess I'll play a land drop now. There is a world where I can double some counters on this, and it does stuff. Again, though, like, Jace bounce is just something that's active. Okay. Opponent has a lot of fetchable lands. Okay, that's an ending. I mean, I think things are a foregone conclusion, but my opponent doesn't have, like, a... No. Alright, that's fine. Alright, we can concede there. GG's. That was a great round. Okay, we're likely playing against Infect this round, and I kind of have all the same sort of the deck. I just have lands and things that do stuff when you play spells. I don't actually have anything that is sort of, like, good on its own. I will be keeping this hand, and I'm not sure what I'm throwing back. I can't throw back the lands. I probably can't throw back Thoughtseize or the Elite, so it's a question of, like, Sedgemoor Witch versus Faithless Salvaging. Sedgemoor Witch creates infinite blockers for Glistener Elves, which is kind of cool, but if this gets countered, I really want a second threat. I think I will get rid of the Salvaging. I also think I'm going to grab non-basics. In fact, sometimes plays like a Wasteland as like a crop rotation target or something like that. Like Wasteland is something that needs to be on my mind, but I also like have not confirmed that my opponent is on Infect yet. I will probably do that right now. Yeah. Okay. I think I will just take the Become Immense here. Like, my opponent has an Infect threat already. I just think I want to take the thing that gives them the most oomph at the same time. I think my opponent is trying to do similar things to what I am doing, except they are probably going to do it faster and more consistently. Really hoping to not get dazed here. That would be pretty disastrous. Okay, good. Alright, there's the Ink Moth. Oh, that is a lot of chip damage. Okay. So, the Witch, am I playing it? I don't think so. I think I just need to try and make this big and maybe find Chain of Smog on land. That's another Witch. Okay, do I want to leave up Lightning Bolt or a Thoughtseize effect? Or I probably want to leave up the Bayou. I will play this first, though. So let's trigger these things again. Do non-land. Okay. Attack seems safe enough. Things can happen. But this is probably fine. Okay. We are looking to goldfish my opponent in this matchup. I probably don't have enough interaction to beat out what they're doing. And it's interesting that they didn't play Pendlehaven this turn. Yeah. They are maybe one piece away from killing me, is kind of the feel that I'm getting here. Alright, that's no shuffle. Yep. I think this is a fine time to just manually click through all of this stuff. Alright. I have 3 Infect. Holy shit. I need another land. My opponent has Flusterstorm up. Damn! That's rough. I can force the Flusterstorm out of their hand if that's something that I want to do, but I don't think that matters. I think this is one of those situations where someone is dead in the next turn cycle, and it's probably me. Actually, maybe playing the Witherbloom Apprentice was better there. Yeah, I should have played the Witherbloom Apprentice. So playing the Witherbloom Apprentice both plays around Daze and makes it so that I have infinite drain next turn for if my opponent leaves back a chump blocker. Yeah, that was actually a really bad mistake. Again, though, I think I die this turn. My opponent just needs one other pump spell. Yep. Yep, so that is exactly 10, and my opponent could have gotten an 11th point if they did their sequencing differently. Alright, so I just need bonus interaction here. So I'll probably pick up Chain Lightnings and Inquisitions. And then some of this other stuff isn't crazy. Like, Force of Vigor is not crazy. Endurance is not crazy. I'm not sure what to cut. Probably some amount of my slower stuff here. Sedgemoor Witch could also fall into this category, but like Sedgemoor Witch goes infinite with Chain of Smog and Thermo-Alchemist doesn't. Also creates chump blockers for Glistener Elves and goes wide of some chump blockers. This hand is just fine. I think it's good enough to keep, but it's not overly impressive. Probably my earliest kill potential is turn 4, assuming I need to do some cantripping before I can actually find a Chain of Smog. But that's probably okay. Bayou. So here's to hoping that I can just punch a hole in this in some way or another. Yes. Shit. Got excited when they had one Infect creature, but then they had Inkmoth as well. And they have Invigorate Berserk. That's rough. That's a very good hand. I'm going to take the Invigorate. I can theoretically chump block this Glistener Elf for a while. It's awkward, because, like, there's also this Berserk, which can just be used as... Oh, holy shit, that is good. We will take a turn off to do that, absolutely. Goodbye, Elf. Alright, and then I can play a Sedgemoor Witch, and just kind of hope that my opponent doesn't draw another Invigorate-style card. Alright. I think I'd like to thin the land out of the deck here. My life total is not super relevant. Take Badlands for the variety. I want another black. Good on green. Alright. I will let the Glistener Elf through the first time. And then after that, I should have Pests forever. Again, though, my opponent is just going to be looking for like an Invigorate to Invigorate plus Berserk this Inkmoth and kill me. So, life's not great. Opponent's just lower to the ground than I am. Oh, that's also horrifying. Okay. Well, we can look at some redraws. Alright, Manamorphose. And I think I'm going to do this before playing the Elite. Just keep all my options open. Just go like green-red here. Now I might play the Elite. Take like black-red as my colors. Alright. Classic. Classic. Not that it really matters that much. Like, I am very likely dead on this turn. Like, I know my opponent has, yeah. There's Invigorate Berserk, 410 Infect. GG's. I mean, I had a lot of power. So I would have Abundant Harvested into Inquisition. I don't think I would have done 15 there. Yep. Okay, let's see. So this is round 4 now. I have a reasonable opening hand. I will keep this. We'll probably be leading on Bayou Thoughtseize, unless my opponent just plays like a turn 1 threat or something. No Covered Island has me thinking about Icefang Coatl immediately. Maybe it could be playing against something crazy like High Tide, who knows, but my brain is currently in either Icefang Coatl land or like blue combo land, like a Show and Tell or something like that. Alright. Let's get a feel for what's going on the other side. Or at least attempt to. Hey, it's indeed Icefang Coatl land. I think Sylvan Library is the card that I'm most scared of here. Although, honestly, this hand is a super pain in the ass for me. The Icefang Coatls are not going to have Death Touch immediately if my opponent ends up playing the Savannah as one of their land drops, though. That's the good news for me. Alright, so I'm always fetching red here, which probably means Taiga. Now the question is, like, which one of these threats am I playing out? I think I play the Elite this turn. There's a chance that this actually gets to get in for combat damage next turn. Whereas in the future beyond that, it becomes less and less likely that that's actually going to be the case. So my opponent will have their draw step plus a card from Icefang Coatl to find the next land to turn this into a Death Toucher. I guess they could also main phase cantrip with an Icefang again. Yeah, or ponder for another basic. That works too. Alright. Okay, great. That is not a land that gives this death touch. There's no permanence, right? Yeah. The second Ice Fang Coatl can turn this on still. So I'll need to Lightning Bolt one of these away. I want to fetch first. Doing 2 non-basics for my opponent already. I don't think I'm going to play around a back-to-basics effect in game 1. Variety? Variety. So I'll hold up both green and red by holding up Taiga. Okay, that did not get forced. In which case, I will try to Lightning Bolt this Ice Fang Coatl. Some value out of my cards. Don't think this gets forced, but this keeps the other Ice Fang Coatl from jumping in. Okay, it does get forced. Wow. Okay, so I will not attack in with this because I would just be trading with an Ice Fang Coatl. That's not great for me. So now my game plan is essentially just to train my opponent for 18 points of life because these things are going to remain in the way. And I'm pretty unlikely to remove both of them. I don't have anything like a forked bolt that will just do that. This is a disaster for me. Yep. Absolute disaster. Oh. Okay. That's not the thing that I thought was going to get bounced there. How to play this turn? I think I start with Abundant Harvest, even though, like, because if I Abundant Harvest into Chain of Smog, I'll absolutely go for the kill. Alright. So, we'll choose non-land here. That was a oddly long pause. Alright, it is just another elite, unfortunately. So we'll fetch. Just like pick up another Bayou or something. Recast an elite. And I guess I need to nug this Planeswalker. It will be annoying later. That again would mean that we're not really getting through this stuff well. But I think I'm just going to kind of resign myself to my fate there. Yeah, I'm just so bad against so many different things that my opponent can do right now. Like an Uro is a disaster. A Shark Typhoon is not as commonly played, but that would be a disaster as well. A Jace would be a disaster. Prismatic Ending, so I lose Witherbloom Apprentice, is also very bad. Yep. Yep, that makes sense. I'm going to go to 17. Which is very good. I don't think I'm going to play around a Terminus. I think this is a game where I am probably going to have to go wide of what my opponent is doing. Guess I could start picking up basics here. Like, I have my colors very much covered. We'll cast the Elite first, and the Witch. The Witch is good, like Menace. Menace is great. But sort of like before, I'm just in this position where a Terminus at any time will just absolutely obliterate me. Best cards off the top will be things like Manamorphose and Abundant Growth that just replace themselves. Okay. Sure. Alright. My opponent is pretty clearly in the driver's seat. They've got 4 cards in hand currently due to this brainstorm. They get a lot of things to look at and try to adjust their plan. They're also at a high enough life total where, like, they can still continue to be the aggressor. Yep. Is it 3-3 right now? Yeah. Alright, I'm at 13. It's not looking too great for me. Yeah. I'll go back to 16, but again, I'm still in this awful position where I can't get through these Ice Fangs. Alright. Swamp here. Make it big. First time I activated this ability. 6 mana for a +1/+1 counter. What a rate. I did that at sorcery speed so that if that creature gets Swords to Plowshare, I get the extra life. It's possible I'm supposed to wait and do it in combat as a combat trick. I was just like thinking that my opponent might not actually read this card. Or like read the card and not process that ability as being relevant. Alright, playing this? Probably playing this. I can probably wait though. There's very few draws that I can have that would be like, oh, I don't have the mana to Witherbloom plus do this thing. I can just like continue to make this bigger and scare my opponent. Okay. What do you have going on? Alright. Opponent is playing scared. I am just basically over here playing a game of Commander and putting a large number of +1/+1 counters on it like it's going out of style. Yeah, I don't know that it actually matters that I cast this right now. I will make my creature continuously bigger. I almost wish I had a way to just, like, trample. One trample hit would do it. Huge! Alright. This is a weird waiting game. I don't like playing this waiting game against my control opponent. Let's fetch something out of the library here. Thin the deck more. And, just continue to grow this thing, mostly out of sheer boredom. I probably play this one now, though. Because this one has to make it around the table before it starts having text. This is probably good enough for a Force of Will if my opponent has one. Yeah. I think I hold back on this other stuff until I actually do draw some sort of cantripping card. This is such a weird spot. I only have 5 mana this time, so I can't activate this. Okay. So since I haven't made this attack before, I think that they have either a removal spell or another flash creature. Alright. Yeah? 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 Would like to place the things on the stack. Okay. Don't care about endurance. Okay. Seems like I've got the win. Okay, my opponent is going to make me click through it, but I've got it. Oh, nope, JK. They conceded once they saw what was going on. Okay, that was cool. I think we got a little lucky to win that one, though. Okay, what do I want to do in terms of sideboarding here? I honestly might want the Chain Lightnings to help get through Icefang Coatl with the elites. Just kind of weird, because that's not particularly good against the endurance side of their deck. So I might want these. I might want this for their potential Uros, and I might want these to get through the Ice Fangs. Kind of like I'm doing every round, I'll probably cut the Faithless Salvaging. Maybe I flooded a little last time I played against this sort of deck. Maybe I'll cut one fetch land and go up one land. I don't know, my turn 1 discard gets worse if I do that. Well, like, due to my opponent's removal density, I don't super think Thermo-Alchemist is great, but I'm also going a little light on actual win conditions if I only run these 14 creatures. And this time around, I'm thinking about the Chain Lightnings to get this through. My Thermo-Alchemist was good enough for Force of Will this match already. I think I want the Thermo-Alchemists on the play and not on the draw. Just go heavier threat density when I am on the play. I think this one goes back. Like, I can cantrip for another land and be okay, but I just don't think this is as powerful as other things that I can do here. And I'm just going to toss back the Lightning Bolt. Best possible draw would just be a turn 1 discard spell. Yeah, sure, that's fine. I don't believe I will just, like, raw go for a turn 2 Witherbloom kill. I think that dumps too many resources. I'll leave the possibility of playing that on turn 1. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think the trigger is more valuable later. JK. Now I'll fire that off now, because my opponent's life total becomes more and more relevant. Bolt you. That is a thing. Yeah, I'd like to try and cast my Chain of Smog when I already have a Sedgemoor Witch in play, if possible. Alright, so my opponent goes down to 13 with Sylvan Library there. Okay, there's a Savannah. So now Swords of Plowshares and Prismatic Ending are on the table. Seems like Prismatic Ending, yep. Just naturally drawn land would be great. Oh, that's also great. So we'll just run back the previous turn cycle, essentially. But now they're put to the test with just, like, another card drawn and a look at a few cards deeper with Sylvan Library. Oh, they're going deeper. They went down to 9. Alright, so now we could be looking at something like a Jace bounce here. Uro? Uro. Now, notably, this is Uro leaving up Savannah, so I probably won't just go for an immediate kill. I think it's just too risky. Oh, it also just might get Prismatic Endings away here. And that would also be the 5th card in graveyard for Uro. Not great for me. Yep, looks like that's it. Okay. Opponent's carving out really well here. Okay. I think I will cast Manamorphose prior to casting Sedgemoor Witch. Because if I draw Endurance, I can Endurance that Uro away. And that would be big game. Iga here. Iga here. So I'll do green with this. Alright, it did not happen, in which case I will just cast a Witch. Now, Sedgemoor Witch does have the potential to just outdamage and deal with Uro. Ah, shit. So I'm going to get Terminist, and then my opponent is going to play Uro and have Uro plus Sylvan Library. That is not good for me. I am sure that goes without saying, but I've got to say something. I wouldn't have been surprised there if my opponent went a little deeper in terms of their life total, since like they do just have Uro on board in this turn cycle. Alright, so there it is. Alright, so my plan to just like aggro my opponent down ASAP is probably not going to work in a lot of cases. I do not believe that I have to make this land drop here. I think I am just going to play the Witch and then hold this as potential Faithless Looting food for later. A reason to play it is so that next turn I could potentially like go into some lines where I Faithless Looting into an Apprentice, but I think having the ability to throw something away is more important right now, because I'm kind of on like infinite combo or bust here. All right. So there's another land drop for my opponent. Outcaster? Nope. All right, so they're just chilling. I'm going to go for Chain of Smog this turn, but I can try to find Disruption first. So let's loot. Guard these two. Actually, 13 is a very relevant life total number. My opponent is attacking in sets of 6. Maybe it's these two that I discard. Alright, so I think I actually play this land. Feed myself with some more Manamorphose-based options. Alright, make another pest. I need red. I have black access already. And the other color I don't think matters too much. It has so much open mana. Maybe I just wait a turn. Actually just play the elite this turn, and then have two different things I could try to go infinite with next turn. Yeah, that's fine. I don't think I'm supposed to attack with this. My opponent has double flash creature. It's quite bad for me. I'm just gonna chill. Maybe it's correct to go for it there, but I'd rather have the possibility of like playing the Chain of Smog combo around a piece of spot removal. Maybe that's wrong, because my opponent gets to like look at more cards with Sylvan Library and like get more cards off of Uro. Sure, ponder away. It's so hard to want to pull the trigger on Chain of Smog in a lot of cases against these blue decks, though, because like if you go for it and you're wrong about whether or not your opponent has interaction, you just lose on the spot, which is like why Chain of Smog isn't a particularly popular combo deck. Are we just getting a hard cast Terminus here? Sucks for me. All right. So I'll name non-land here. All right. I think I want to cast this looting from the graveyard. I don't want to cast this looting. My goal is to play a critter and Chain of Smog and take my opponent out in a turn cycle. It's also possible that I need to start playing for a timeout. My opponent is down 5 minutes, and their deck is slow to close in non-Uro cases. Okay. Dress down, so you're just going to play an Uro to play directly. I don't know that that's actually better than just getting the card out of it, because you have the mana to do that. But do your thing. Alright, so let's pick non-land here. Again. You are a little late. And awkwardly, this stuff doesn't produce the right colors. I guess I'm just chilling. So I'm taking 6 here and going down yet another card. At this point, I'm going to hold the Lightning Bolt for a potential Planeswalker that my opponent has. I don't expect to, like, win the game at this point. I'll just hold this. I also probably have to like use the endurance as a chump blocker, unfortunately. Alright, so need to respond to that. Otherwise I can't do this, but then unfortunately my opponent just like floops it out of the way. Alright. I'm gonna let my opponent floop this out of the way. I'll take 6, and then I have to do this just absolutely gut-wrenching line of double bolting this Uro when they have Caracas, and they can just get it back. Ugh. I'm at 2. Here's the hoping that I draw like Witherbloom, and I can just try to go off. But again, opponent is discarding cards to hand size here. At 2. Very specifically at 2. Alright, attempt Chain Lightning here. Attempt Lightning Bolt here. Yeah. You can do any number of things. That's fine. And now we're dead. We'll just do a few more game actions that'll run a little bit of time off their clock. Yeah, they don't mind discarding at this point. All right, and they do have EE. All right, so my opponent knows what's up. And they kill me. All right. On the play, I probably care about my threat density, kind of like I talked about previously, and I probably want to place some number of the Thermo-Alchemists on the play. Maybe on the play, I don't so much worry about the chain lightnings, and I worry more about trying to punch in and do a thing. It's also possible I'm supposed to just, like, ignore the Uro and say, hey, most of the time I'm going to win via Chain of Smog, and just try to, like, punch a hole harder with things like Inquisition. The Inquisitions just become increasingly worse as the game goes on, though. They just help to smooth out my initial turns. I don't know. Maybe that is the plan. Maybe the plan is the initial turns. And I just kind of like do something that looks like this. Yeah, this is fine. So this needs to produce actual black mana, and probably also needs to produce green mana, so this is going to be Bayou. And I'll have to decide pretty early on whether or not I'm going to just, like, quote-unquote, go for it, or whether I'm going to try to drag this game on to time, because the play patterns for those two things are going to be extremely different. I'm going to Abundant Harvest and just name a land, I think. I think I'm going to want to hit my third land drop. That is the only land in my entire deck that I did not want to draw. That's super unfortunate. Oh. Name human here, obviously. And we'll play the elite. So we'll double Manamorphose next turn and kind of see where things go. I don't really want to super try to go off into Swords to Plowshares. That is awkward. Cavernous Souls is so awkward. Alright. We always yield to this. I will make black-green here. Okay, this is great. I'll Thoughtseize here. And we'll see if my opponent can do something to answer this now or stop my combo now. Okay. That counts as something that stops the combo. Kind of. Oh, wow. Force of Will pitching back to basics. Okay, very happy to see that go. All right. I don't think I'm playing around another back to basics. Like, if it happens and I have one basic land, I'm still pretty screwed. So, fetch a Taiga. Fetch a Taiga. Play a Manamorphose. I'll pick black for one of these colors. I think I'll pick black-green, so that if I draw a Witherbloom Apprentice, I can play it. Alright, we're going deeper. Third Manamorphose of the turn. Alright. Are we going in? Are we just doing it? My opponent has to chump block with the Ice Fang this turn. I think we're just doing it. Excuse me. Let's go. Yes, I'll copy the spell. Same targets. Okay. So I copied this a whole bunch in case my opponent's out is Swords to Plowshares. I brought this up to a 64-64. Again, differences between paper magic and in-person magic. Oh, they did have another back to basics. All right, so we crash in with this because this does not have Death Touch yet, and the chump block is obligated. So now my opponent, in their remaining 3 cards, 2 in hand and 1 off the top of their library, needs a white source and an answer to this turn. There's other potential things that they could do to survive, but this eliminates a lot of those. Okay, and we win the match for our troubles. GG. What does that put our record at now? Are we 2-2 now? Yeah, we're 2-2 now. Alright, I've kept my opening hand in the final round here. Good luck to you too. And I have a theoretical turn 3 goldfish if I am just willing to go for it. I have a little bit too much of the same side of the deck in that, like, I have a lot of Magecraft things and not a lot of ways to trigger it, but hey, that's what the whole infinite combo thing is there for, right? Okay. That's a good sign. Yup, this is a good sign. This means that we will just be going for the turn 3 kill in all likelihood. I would be fine drawing another land. I don't think I'm gonna fetch here. Okay. I'm gonna fetch here. And there's a world where I should just get a basic swamp here because I don't want to get knocked off black. That's just so important right now. If I get, because if I keep, well, yeah, I'm gonna grab basic swamp. Because then if I draw any land after getting wastelanded, I just have the combo. Now my opponent could be an abrupt decay deck. They could be a wasteland deck. They could just be elves. All right, they are just elves. All right, so someone dies in the next turn cycle. We'll see if it's me or if it's them. A big question here is, like, do they have the Gaia's Cradle? Because if they have the Gaia's Cradle, they can get to the point. Okay. I'm probably good now. So the Dryad Arbor can untap, and it would have to be a Birchlow Ranger here for them to really continue going. Okay, I guess, yeah. Now I am not going to die this turn, and they are dead on my turn, just 100% of the time. Nothing to be done about it. Goldfish. Chain of Smog. Target me. Always yield. GG's. My combo deck did the thing faster. Target me. Okay. They see the writing on the wall and concede. So essentially, this is a race. I will want to keep a hand that has Chain of Smog in it basically every time. I want Inquisitions and Chain Lightnings to help get me to the point where I just kill my opponent. A non-combo kill is not viable. I think this needs to go out. Dragon's Guard Elite is only okay here. Like, an infinite-sized creature is fine, but that doesn't actually kill my opponent a lot of the time. I wonder if I should just cut one of those accordingly. Better than Faithless Salvaging? Probably better than Faithless Salvaging. I can still, like, Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning and get through and stuff. It's close, though. Actually, maybe, Sedgemoor Witch? Sedgemoor Witch also, like, maybe beats elves online, but beats elves on paper a lot of the time, because online, like, I have to click a lot of times in order to play through lines that beat Craterhook Behemoth, whereas in paper, I would say, like, I make 1,000,000 power worth of pests, and that's just instantly done. And, like, my opponent literally can't make 1,000,000 power with Craterhoof. Yep. Yeah, maybe I go down one. Yeah, maybe I go down one of these. It's still obviously good and makes a crap ton of chump blockers. Yeah, this is a hand with a Chain of Smog, so I'll keep this. It also has turn 1 disruption. That's totally good with me. So my Wooded Foothills has to get a Badlands, which is totally fine. Okay. Abundant Harvest is an okay pickup. That means that I can get my 3rd land drop and try to go for the combo on turn 4. Thought sees you. So this means that my opponent is just going to have access to a Gaia's Cradle at any point. I have to keep that in mind. That's a good hand. That is a hand that's really hard to attack. This is tough. I think I have to take the Natural Order, because their turn 4 comes before my turn 4. And on my turn 4, I can make infinite pests. Well, you know, infinite, more in air quotes right now than anything else. Oh, hello. I will Lightning Bolt this end of turn, in all likelihood. So let's Abundant Harvest for a land. I pick up Taiga. Then they'll activate this end of turn. But they won't activate it end of turn. Very interesting. I just Lightning Bolt to take this out now. They activate and this enters tapped. Yes, I will do that. I was really hoping they would activate it, find Cradle, and then I would get to bolt this. I'm not really expecting, like, Sajiri's Step here. Okay. Okay, cool. Looks like my opponent is missing their land drop here, which is great for me. So I'm going to play out a Sedgemoor Witch this turn. My opponent will use most of their turn to answer it. Then I will play out a second Sedgemoor Witch. And then hopefully I create infinite pests in the next turn cycle beyond that. So this Guy's Cradle is just super awkward for my opponent right now. Oh? Oh? Really? Really? Okay. Yeah, this is just infinite dudes for me, so my opponent is going to have an incredible glimpse turn. I guess I can Faithless Looting first and see if I find another piece of interaction, because I'm going to discard all this stuff anyway. Always yield to that. I'm going to be doing a lot of that. Like a Lightning Bolt would be super dope here, for example. Thoughtseize would also be good. Okay. This is all junk here. Alright, so I'll play my land, and we'll do the whole Chain of Smog combo thing. And this creates infinite pests. And we'll also take 2 cards out of my opponent's hand to boot. I am going to have to click this for an exceptionally long time, though. Okay, my opponent gave me the GGs there. Concession appreciated, because otherwise I was probably going to have to do that like probably over 100 times to play around like losing to Craterhoof and then having enough on the backswing to kill after blocking through a Craterhoof. It would have been miserable. But that's the sort of position that I could not have lost from in paper. Overall thoughts on the deck list? Not bad. I will say the Thermo-Alchemist portion of the shell was unfortunately the weakest portion of the shell, since it does not go infinite with Chain of Smog like the other pieces do. The other pieces were just more valuable, and Thermo-Alchemist got boarded out a lot. Now, the Thermo-Alchemist was fine in Game 1 scenarios where it acted as additional reach with Witherbloom Apprentice. But once we got to the sideboard and, we had 4 or more cards we wanted to bring in, there's not a lot of cards that I could really cut from this deck. Like, the cuttable cards were like the Thermo-Alchemist, the Faithless Salvagings, and the Lightning Bolts most of the time, and the rest of the shell just kind of had to stay there. This deck list is fine. If I were going to play this again, I would take a more serious look at the mana base. I'm not sure if the basics are correct. Like, we didn't play against like a Delver deck where the Wastelands are like super impactful. But for example, every time that I drew Mountain, it made it harder to play Witherbloom Apprentice, or it made it harder to like do Witherbloom plus something else in a turn cycle. So maybe of the stuff here, like maybe you keep the Forest and the Swamp, since those contribute to your combo stuff, and like you don't play the Mountain and you just play another fetch land or another Bayou or a main deck Cavern of Souls or something in that spot. Again, I didn't sit down with a calculator and like really bust out the specifics of the mana base. Doing that sort of thing is really only useful like when you're doing serious tournament prep. Like, you're going to keep playing a deck, if it's going to be a one shot for a video or something, probably not worth your time. As far as the sideboard goes, I liked the things that I had access to. Maybe I want something like a Defense Grid or Veil of Summer for going off versus some of these blue decks to make something stronger. If I was in white, something like an Orum's Chant would be exactly what I'm looking for, because like a Veil of Summer is not going to stop you from just like getting got by a Swords of Plowshares or a Lightning Bolt on your turn, right? So Defense Grid could be okay. It's a little mana intensive and slow though, for a deck without a bunch of fast mana. But generally speaking, I like what this has to offer. This was a decent idea. I do think if you want to try to like play with pingers like Thermo-Alchemist and Legacy, you probably don't want to pair them with this Chain of Smog stuff like we were doing here, because like we can see there's tension between these ideas, and you would rather be playing like a blue-red, maybe like Prowess, Young Pyromancer style deck that really gets a lot of value out of casting its instants and sorceries. We did an okay job at replacing cards that we were drawing with Faithless Looting, Abundant Harvest, Manamorphose, and so forth. Faithless Salvaging, I kept cutting it. It was probably a fine Game 1 card, although there might be better options. There's some like 2-mana green cantrips that you could consider like Once Upon a Time to help smooth out some of the opening hands as well. That wouldn't be the worst to hard cast. If there's one that can simultaneously dig for like both Witherbloom and Chain of Smog at 2 mana, I want that. But I just couldn't think of what that was off the top of my head when I was designing this deck. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please click the like button. That's the easiest way to support me for free. And please consider doing a donation deck list in the future if you have something sweet like this that you want to see on stream. Have a great rest of the day, folks. See ya!